Good afternoon, gentlemen. We are from the METI Secretariat. We will go on live on YouTube now. So we'll put the link for YouTube channel that you can click on the chat window, and you can also share this to your colleagues to join this meeting over YouTube channel. Thank you.
Hi everybody, this is now 2 o'clock. We are still waiting for one of our speakers, Pablo from IRENA. He should be joining in few minutes. This is now 2 o'clock. We are still waiting for one of our speakers, Pablo from IRENA. Should be joining in few minutes. This is not 2 o'clock. We are still waiting for one of our speakers, Pablo from IRENA. Good. I see that Pablo is already joining. Hi, Pablo. Can you hear me?
How are you guys? Happy to be here.
Yeah, good. Thank you for being able to make it. We also still waiting for Pak Dirjen, Pak Toto.
Can you hear me? How are you guys? Happy to be here.
Yeah, good. Thank you for being able to make it. We also still waiting for Pak Dirjen, Pak Toto.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is from the Secretariat again. We'll try to use the screen sharing capability. We're just testing, and we'll stop the screen sharing when we are complete. Thank you. Pak Paul, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining our Bincang-Bincang METI talk this today. Very welcome for all of you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Our discussion today is part of the series of discussion that we have conducted during the work from home mode during COVID. We have it every Friday at 2 p.m. And we discussed already several issues from the renewable energy development on the policy side, on the investment, on the financing. And today, we will discuss specifically about the readiness of the international investors to invest in renewable in Indonesia. Uh, we are happy to have Pablo from IRENA, Peter from PFAN, and Ben Valkis from 3GT. And also we have Pak Ari Surono from Pena Energy to become our speakers of today. And we also invited Pak Dirjen, Pak Toto, to join our discussion today so that we could get, let's say, latest update on the renewable energy policy in Indonesia. But I see in the list that Pak Toto has not joined yet, or is someone from EBTKE representing Pak Toto? Okay, if not, then we thank you everybody for joining us today, and to officially open our Zoom meeting today. I'd like to invite Pak Surya for his speech. Please, Pak Surya.
Yeah. Thank you, Abao. Good afternoon, everybody. This is very good session for us to have what we call it bincang-bincang or Meti talks for this. We already run this talk for almost every week since the lockdown system in the COVID-19 since last March. So I don't know how many times that we already had. But this time, what we need is we need the update from IRENA. So thank you for Pablo from IRENA that you can join us today. And we need also some information or the experience from DuPont. Peter, welcome, Peter. Thank you for coming and joining this event today. Actually, Pak Toto has confirmed that he will join, but I don't know in the last minute, maybe something that, but we try to run this, and if Pak Toto will join later, then we can give to Pak Toto the session later on. Again, thank you to all of you, to all of the participants in the very, very tight session today because we have a lot of meeting. We have Geothermal Association also run focus group discussion today. We also have certification institution meeting in METI Secretariat. So maybe some of the people cannot join this afternoon session. Again, thank you to all of you. Please, Pak Paul, lead the meeting. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Pak Surya, for a short speech. We would like to invite Pablo to give us update about the latest report from IRENA about the costing of the renewable energy. Pak Ari, if you can allow Pablo to share the screen, please.
Yes, I think it's allowed now. Pablo, perhaps you can try sharing your screen, please.
Okay, please, Pablo.
Hello, everyone. I hope it's working. I'm very happy to be here to join you in this wonderful conversation. And I hope you can see my screen now. Can you?
Yes,
Yes.
we can see your screen now.
All right, good. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation again, Paul and everyone. We're very happy to share some insights from our latest report. It's actually very fresh from the oven. We just released it a few weeks ago. And it's called Renewable Power Generation Costs in 2019. As you know, we've been doing an effort to do this quite to keep on informing the markets on a very periodic basis, very frequent basis. We've been doing lots of different types of analysis. In the past, we started out with some technology specific reports. In the recent times, we've been doing our best to update everyone and our member countries with different insights, as you can see in the screen. And this is all, I mean, I'm currently, IRENA's headquarters, as you might know, is in Abu Dhabi. I'm working out of an office which IRENA has in Bonn, in Germany. This is the good-looking colleagues from the costing team, which are responsible for these insights. And what pretty much we're talking about these days, it hasn't changed much from last year's in the sense of costs for renewable power continuing to fall, for renewable energy, solar, wind power in particular. So in most parts of the world, renewable energy is now the least cost source of new electricity. For the capacity, new added capacity installed in 2019, 56% of that capacity was deemed to be cost less than the cheapest new coal option. This is at the utility scale. And the finding that we're getting now is that increasingly these renewables will undercut operating costs of existing coal plants. Where are these cost reductions coming from? I'll focus a little bit more on solar and wind this time, but in general, they're coming from improved technology, economies of scale. You know, developers are gaining more experience. I guess we'll talk about that a bit later as well from other speakers. Of course, the lower perception of risk for renewables also plays a role. Our analysis is mostly based on, at least in this report, is heavily based on the IRENA renewable cost database. So we have two databases at IRENA regarding costs. One is the project cost database, so to speak, or also sometimes called LCOE cost database, which contains around 18,000 real-life renewable energy projects for which we have enough information to calculate an LCOE. This amounts to around 1,800 gigawatts of capacity for all renewable energy technologies, as you can see here. More recently, to complement this database, we've introduced and kept a different separate database, which is we call the PPA auction database. As you know, when competitive procurement started to play a big role for renewables, we started to keep track of those price trends, cost trends, and this is what we do in this database. So the analysis I'm going to show you is heavily based on these databases. Maybe a quick overview here of what we can see here for all the, maybe I can just put the pointer. Here we can see the for each of the renewable energy technologies, the LCOE in US dollars per kilowatt hour. And it's each of the circles in this chart represents a project, and the thick lines represent the weighted average LCOE of that technology. So for example, you can see in the case of solar PV, a quite dramatic decrease in LCOE of about 82% from 2010 to 2019. All right. So big story of success for PV, also for wind technologies, especially onshore wind, very competitive now. All renewable energy technologies are falling within the estimated range of fossil fuel technologies, and some of them increasingly on the lower end of that range, some actually undercutting it more often, like PV and onshore wind. This is at the LCOE level. For the more mature technologies, I mean, the story has been a little bit different, but for mostly we're seeing increased competitiveness for all renewable energy technologies, and even in the case of CSP, it's coming closer to the fossil fuel cost range. But also looking a little bit into the future, it's possible when we combine the insights from these two databases. As you can see here, so in blue we have here the projects from the LCOE database, and in orange we have the auction database here, projects from the auction database. So the thick lines also show the weighted average cost from those two databases. And you can see in the case of, for example, in PV, shifting towards 2021, of course, strictly speaking, the auction prices and the LCOE estimates are not directly comparable, but somehow the auction databases can give an indication of where the LCOE in the future might go. So we try to normalize some of the costs for the auctions and compare them here, just to give an indication of where the future might go for the technologies. So this hints that the cost reductions will continue down to 2021 and 2023. Again, utility scale PV and onshore wind are expected to continue to undercut the cheapest new fossil fuel options, mostly coal. For offshore wind and CSP, here we concentrate only on these four technologies. I mean, though there's still less mature technologies than PV and onshore wind, we can still expect step changes, at least if we can trust the initial signals from the auction prices that have been released so far and published so far. And so a little bit of the summary. The really recent cost trend from year on year at the LCOE level, we see a 13% reduction for PV, 9% reduction for both the wind technologies. For CSP, it's a little bit different, very mild cost reduction, but it's probably going to change in the next years as the technology continues to mature. If we take a look at the historical trend, it's quite remarkable. LCOE reductions for PV at around 82%. For offshore wind, 29%, 39% for onshore. For CSP, also very historically, almost half reduction for that perspective. But if we take a look at the longer frame, we can still expect this to continue. And this would mean a 90% reduction for PV from 2010. So what is shown here is the so-called learning rates. So here we have the LCOE or the cost of electricity in US dollars per kilowatt hour. Here we show the cumulative deployment in megawatts. So the concept of the learn rate, for those of you who may not know that, is to get an estimate of how much the cost of a technology might come down depending on the deployment of that technology. So the learning rate typically is estimated as the percentage decline in a certain cost when the cumulative installed capacity in this axis here shown doubles, right? So it's an indication of the maturity of the technology and how fast the costs can come down. This varies by technology, as you can see here. So for example, for utility scale PV, you can see, depending on the period that you choose, if you take a look at the historical period from 2010 to 2019, it may be around 36%. If we extend that, also using the price indications from the auction database, down to 2021, for example, and then we extend the longer period, then you can see that the learning rate will be 40%. So 40% cost reduction in the cost of electricity for every doubling of the cumulative installed capacity of PV. A little bit different numbers for the other technologies. Quite remarkable for CSP. If you take a look at the 2020 to 2021 period, onshore wind around 30%. If you take a look at that longer period, 29% actually, and a little bit less steep cost reduction for offshore wind. We've made an effort this time around to come up with some analysis of the investment trends from renewable energy capacity. And this is very interesting because mostly analyzing the historical changes, right? So if you see from this chart in 2010, where the total renewable energy capacity additions were 88 gigawatts, the investment value for all that addition, capacity addition, was around 210 billion. This is a very, I mean, this is based out of our cost data, and our Arena also keeps statistics of capacity additions for all renewable energy technologies. So with those two, we can come up with this investment estimates. If we take a look at what happened in 2019, we can see that almost twice that level of renewable energy capacity could be commissioned compared to 2010, but the investment value was only 253 billion. So only a fifth higher than 2010. This is, of course, because of the increased competitiveness of renewable energy. Here you can see different shares of technologies. In 2019, solar PV is heavily dominating here. This is the utility. This is the distributed solar PV. Still, so they are dominating the deployment worldwide. This global perspective. If we take a look at the individual trend by technology, this is a very nice chart. So on the left axis, we show the investment value in US dollars billion. On the right, so the right-hand side vertical axis shows the capacity. So this line shows the capacity that has increased. For example, for PV, how it has increased distributed PV down to up to this level here. And you can see that the deployed capacity in the case of PV, for example, has increased remarkably, while the investment value is shown on the left axis. So this US dollars billion. So for utility scale PV, sorry about that. It has been possible to show a dramatic increase of deployment relative to the total investment needed. For distributed PV, it's a little bit less dramatic or less remarkable, but still significant. This also, looking at this, also shows the changing needs in capacity addition. So, but in general terms, with less investment, we can add more capacity. If you invest $1 million US if you invested $1 million US in 2010, you could install 230 kilowatts of PV. And now you can start 1,000 kilowatts of PV. For onshore wind, it's a bit less dramatic, but still significant. So shifting from 514 kilowatts to 679 kilowatts. The PV part is just the utility one. So I think I won't have time to go deeply into each of the technologies, but this can give you a hint of what we've been doing. I'm happy to take some questions if needed at the right time.
Yeah, thank you, Pablo, for that presentation. That's really interesting to see the report that with the falling cost of renewable, we see that the total capacity additions in renewable is really increased. Uh, Thank you for again. We will be having some question and answer later on, and I hope that you will stay and answer
Right.
some questions on that. We are
Pleasure.
still waiting for Pat Toto, but while waiting, then I'll be happy to ask Peter to deliver the presentation. Please, Peter.
Okay, is the slide on?
Yes, yes, that's good.
Great. Great. Well, thank you, Pak Paul, and thank you to Meti for organizing the talks. And it sounds like a good way to spend time during lockdown. And I'm honored to be part of this. I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Harry Yuwono. I am a consultant based in Bangkok, and I'm going to talk about PFAN, which is a private financing advisory network, what it is, how it works, and how it might be helpful to Indonesian companies to help scale up investment into renewable energy, which is the topic of today's weekly talk. So the problem we see in the marketplace, which is quite common still, even though there are lots of projects and lots of people investing money, is that there's a limited supply of projects that are ready for investors. And some of the reasons for this are just they're poorly structured. The project developers lack the right financial and commercial skills, and they have unrealistic expectations. On the other side, you have a problem scaling up investment, even though, as we saw from Pablo's excellent talk, that the cost curves are really coming down, and these projects can be quite, yield quite good returns, and are lower. It's quite interesting to hear that 56% of the utility scale PV that came in last year, or utility scale renewables capacity, was cheaper than new coal. That's outstanding. But still, you have underdeveloped investment cultures and risk assessment. You have a lack of familiarity with many of the new technologies and business models. And really importantly, you have a limited number of exits. So the investors want to get their money out, and there's not enough experience with investors coming in, developing the project, and being able to get their money out. So this is what PFAN addresses. And what PFAN is, essentially, you see the logo up on the right, you see the UNIDO logo and the REAP logo. So, and on the top left, you see the PFAN logo. So PFAN is a private financing advisory network. We are a network of more than 150 climate and clean energy experts all over the world. The UNIDO logo is up there because UNIDO is the manager of the PFAN program. Okay, so donor funding comes in from the Swedish government, the Australian government, the US government, Norway, and other countries who put funding in to support coaching of projects. So this slide, I'll go back to this slide. Basically, what PFAN does is it takes the projects that need assistance and coaches them and gets them ready for investment. So back to what PFAN has been able to accomplish over the last 12 years since it was started in 2008. We have coached almost 700 projects, and about 126 of these projects have been able to raise investment for a total of $1.7 billion. So that means that the average project is about $15 million. And that also means that for every project that we coach, we have about a 20% success rate. Okay, so in fact, the average is a bit higher. The median project is closer to $1 to $5 million. So we're really talking about SMEs, small companies, greenfield companies that need assistance in raising finance for their clean energy and climate projects. And so what we do when we take this donor money and make coaching available is we try to select projects that are not only commercially and technically viable, but they have a potential to scale up, they have a significant climate impact, and they have a real development impact, as well as supporting gender equity. So we do have a significant focus also on women's-led businesses, but at the core of it is we don't provide coaching for projects unless they have a really good management team, they have a good technical product, they are commercially viable, and they understand the market. So this shows a little bit about the sort of criteria on the right. You can see $1 to $50 million. You can see these are usually they're the first round of external financing. We don't usually, we stay with a company maybe for 2 or 3 rounds of financing. But, and the other thing is we also, besides renewable energy, which is the topic of today, we provide coaching and assistance for projects that cover all areas of climate adaptation and resilience. So that would include climate smart agriculture, water, health, and other aspects of climate resilience. But most of the projects that we have funded that I described earlier in this pipeline of 126 projects that have gotten financing, about 90% or 95% have been energy efficiency or renewable energy projects. So this is what we do. We identify the projects. We have a quarterly selection process, which Harry will talk about. And then we coach projects either to get them, develop them, to get them ready for investors, or directly to introduce them to investors if they're more mature. We have investment forums and roadshows. Given COVID, we're starting to do more webinars like this, where we are presenting virtually, but also investor meets we're doing more virtually as well, given the fact that travel is very challenging during the pandemic. So our business model is basically to work with local advisors in each country. So my role is the regional coordinator for Asia. Again, I'm based in Bangkok. We cover 12 countries. We cover 7 countries in ASEAN and 5 countries in South Asia. We provide coaching. We don't provide funding. We do not invest or lend money. We do not do policy work. We only identify projects, coach them, and introduce them to investors. And sometimes, more recently, we're starting to work with investors and fund managers and reverse engineer projects based on the criteria and investment appetite of the investment fund or of the bank. And these are the donors. I mentioned them before: Sweden, Australia, US, Norway, the other METI in Japan. And there's a cooling initiative called the Kigali Cooling Initiative, and also the German government. So this is where we are active. I helped to start PFAN in 2009. in Southeast Asia and South Asia. I worked with Hari since I think 2010, and we're quite active across 12 countries in this region. And South Asia, we started a network in Central Asia and Eastern Europe a few years ago. We have 3 sub-networks in Africa, and we are active also in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I wanted to make it clear that we are focused, where we are focused in the ecosystem. So you see on the left, these are the early stage seed funds and incubators, early stage grants. On the right, you have larger commercial investments. You have development financing institutes like ADB or World Bank or IFC. You have larger impact investors and commercial investors. So where PFAN is actually sort of right in the middle here. We are post seed funding, the initial, as I mentioned earlier, commercial raise for a project. And some of the projects that we have helped to get financing go on to get funding from ADB's private sector group or IFC or larger commercial investors as they scale up. So this is where we have been active. This is sort of a representative slice of projects over the past couple of years. And I'd say, even though we've been quite active in Indonesia over the past 12 years, but obviously there's a lot more potential. I think given the size of Indonesia and the potential in the renewable energy market, that share, we expect that to increase. And then on the right, I think it's important just to say, we're not, we believe that the market will help to dictate where the investments, the best investments are. So we are technology neutral. We do some special promotions for certain types of projects. For example, we've done promotion for women-led rural energy businesses. We're doing a special promotion on with investment fund looking at sustainable mobility and things like that. We've done special outreach for energy efficient cooling. But in general, we just reflect what the market says, and that's where these are where the projects are that where projects are being developed, and these are the breakdown of projects that we're coaching, which is quite distributed all over renewable energy, several different types of renewable energy to waste energy. And we always have about 10% energy efficiency. We would like that to be higher. Another thing that we'd like to be higher as well is clean transport as the new sustainable mobility technologies come in. So finally, before I hand over to Hari, I'll just say PFAN was set up as under the UN FCCC to demonstrate the capacity to utilize private sector financing to yield greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So the whole time that PFAN was being started, all the talking and negotiating was going on. We were actually getting deals done, and we continue to get deals done, and that's what we focus on. But we need to work faster, so we are looking at ways of refining our model, getting better at origination, working networks like we're here today to reach out through this the METI network and identify interested projects in Indonesia. We're also looking at access to wholesale capital markets, bundling of projects, securitization, and as I mentioned earlier, reverse engineering to the needs of some investors and fund managers. So where we'd like to be, we did $1.7 billion over the first 12 years. By 2022, we'd like to be doing somewhere around $250 to $700 million a year. And to do that, we'd have to be coaching about 300 projects and closing about 30 to 70 projects a year. And I'll hand it over to my colleague, Harry Yuwono, who has been associated with PFAN since it started in Indonesia in 2009. Harry? And if we're not able to get Harry, I will continue, but are you able to get on the call and join me, Harry?
Oh, yes, Peter.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yes, PFAN is happy to have more projects from Indonesia related to renewable energy, energy efficiency, and clean transport. Seeing that the target of RE target in Indonesia is 23% by 2025, and we are now about 14%. There are a lot of projects need to be generated, and PFAN will be happy to support those projects so that they are ready for investors. And it means quite a lot of investment to be required, about more than 10 billion US dollar. And PFAN is happy to bring those projects into our network so that there are more climate and clean energy projects can be implemented in Indonesia. And hopefully there are more Indonesian companies will have benefits from PFAN. And it's expected that renewable energy will reduce the cost of electricity to the customer, and also that renewable energy can also improve and have resilience in the power system, and it will provide value added to the network. And what we heard now that in the future, there are quite a lot of renewable energy project will be built, and PFAN has been successful working with SMI, BCA, and IDA from Japan in the past. We have supported some mini hydro projects in Sumatra, some biomass projects in North Sumatra, and energy efficiency for street lighting in Bandung and Solo. PFAN has a new call for application, and it is expected that by the 1st of September in 2020, we'll have a lot of project ready coming into our system. And because PFAN is funded by a donor, and some project has to register to our system, and hopefully there are more project developer registered to our system. And over to you, Peter.
Just to say thank you very much for the opportunity, Paul and the folks from METI. We're happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Peter and Hari, for the presentation about PFAN. And we hope really that there will be more and more projects that can be developed supported by PFAN. We have here, we have information from Pak Haris that Pak Toto, the DG for Renewable, is not able to join us because he has other urgent thing to do. But we have here Pak Haris. Pak Haris.
Yeah, okay, Pak.
Yeah. The question that we have to Pak Joko was, what was the latest update on the renewable energy policy in Indonesia? If you would be able to share it on that latest update, would be good. Please, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Paul. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We apologize because our DG could not join with our meeting today because he also has another important meeting. I would like to share a brief about the status of renewable energy development in Indonesia. I think Pak Hari already mentioned about our target to achieve 23% by 2025, and current progress is for the primary energy, renewable energy mix in renewable energy in energy primary energy mix about 9.15%. So still far from our target, 23%. But if we're talking about the power plant, so the status now is about 15%. Now we already has installed capacity is about 10,400 megawatt for PV, for renewable energy. Consists of hydro is about 58%. Geothermal is about 20.5%, bioenergy 19.8%, wind and PV the rest. So this is the situation of our renewable energy progress. We realized that this our achievement is still far from the target. So why now we try to do another program? So we call it the creating market, and our program also is supported by PLN. PLN has another program called a Green Booster program. So the Green Booster program is the target is about 5,200 megawatt until 2025, and our creating market also similar. So to implement this the program, so we try to increase the level of our regulation now. So we currently finalize President regulation related to the price of renewable energy. In this regulation, so in this regulation, we try to implement feed-in tariff for the for power plant below the capacity below 20 megawatt for wind, solar, and hydro, and below 10 megawatt for biomass and biogas. So, but for the above 20 megawatt for hydro, wind, and solar, we try to implement auction and also B2B approach. And also for the biomass and biogas above 10 megawatt, we also try to do the same. And then related to the procurement under our regulation, we try also to implement a direct appointment, and then the rest is auction. So this is our progress now of our planning to accelerate the renewable energy. And there is also specific program actually to boost the implementation of this renewable energy, and then also to achieve the target of our electrification ratio, because now is our electrification ratio is about 98%, and we are still have a big number of population, but now we has short-term program to electrify about 433 villages that do not have electricity access yet, through several approach like grid expansion, communal renewable energy power plant, mini grid, and also microgrid, and also we try also to develop we call it tabung listrik in Indonesia. So it is like a power bank for our handphone, but this the power bank is the capacity is about 500 watt hour or 1 kilowatt hour each power bank. So this is try to distribute to our community in the many villages, especially in the eastern part of Indonesia. This is our planning. And another program is about the large-scale PV. So based on our planning through if the regulation, I mean the president regulation related to the renewable energy is implemented, so we try to do also procurement for large scale of renewable energy, let's say for the PV, because we know that the PV is a very progress reducing price. So we try to do large scale procurement for this. And another program is about the rooftop PV. So we have not only rooftop PV in a PLN customer, but we are also try to do in the new program to develop a more massive of this PV in the new house facilitated by the government, and also try to do shifting subsidy from the subsidy for the electricity for the customer, certain customer, to the change to provide the PV rooftop. But this is still on our, I think, still under discussion. Another program related to the biomass. Indonesia has a big coal power plant. I think you already know. So we try to reduce the use of coal by implementing co-firing using biomass about 5%. So this is also one of our program. And then another program about the large hydro. You know that Indonesia has a big potential hydro in Sumatra, Java, but the most I think in North Kalimantan and also in Papua. North Kalimantan, we identify about more than, I think, more than 16,000 megawatt potential for the hydro in the area, and several potential already start to develop by several private company. And then also in Papua, we have also a big potential in the area, and several investors also already on the discussion to achieve 20,000 megawatt in the area. But this planning is not only in supply side, but also integrated to the demand side. So we try to also to develop industrial, heavy industry in the area. And another program is to replace the existing diesel in the remote area. So by using renewable energy like PV and then also biomass. So I think these all of our activity now, and we are still intensively to discuss with this program and planning to do with the PLN and then also stakeholder. Thank you, Pak Paul.
Thank you very much for Pak Haris for let's say explaining the latest update on the policy related to renewable energy in Indonesia. I hope you will stay. I believe that some of the questions will come later on to you. We have here two investors that is ready to invest in Indonesia. The first, I would like to invite Pak Beng Tua Walkis to deliver presentation about the investment that now he's planning. Please, Pak Beng.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for inviting me here and then talk about what we are doing in Indonesia and why we are doing that. So this 3GT is an initiative I took in 2015. I was thinking about how can I compensate for my and my family's carbon footprint, and came to the conclusion that investing in renewable energy is the best way. And I was actually at 15, I was asked by UBS Bank if I could act as a social entrepreneur coach in A&M conference here in Jakarta. And I said I can do that. And that gave me the opportunity to visit a small runoff hydro program power plant, 120 kilowatts, that has been built by grants, and they were sharing the income from that There's some noise here. Sharing that income with a corporate organization that was doing social work in that small village, and that gave the inspiration to do this, start this 3GT project. 3GT stands for 3 good things. First good thing is climate change. I mean, trying to do something that means having hydropower and produce clean kilowatt hours. Second good thing is that we thought that if we combine this with the social impact, social foundation, and make them as a shareholder, they will get an evergreen income stream from that, and that foundation should do the work that in this small hydropower can support the local people, and then they would not have the headache that all NGOs has for fundraising. They would have income, so that is a strong driver for us. The third thing is that we as investors should get a decent return. So those are the three basic. And once thinking about this at 2015, this regulation 19 2015 came, and the business plan was built upon that. So if we go to next slide, Paul, this is a structure. This is a rather complicated structure, and actually it's even more complicated because that is based on the regulations for in Indonesia that's needed for an international bankable structure. Baker McKinsey and HSP has helped us set up that. But if you look at the top, we have the investors, that is us. We need to have an international financial partner, that is for the debt. We have the investment company in Singapore, 3GT, so that is actually handling all of the finance. On ground in Indonesia, we have the team. We have 4 people in Indonesia working with it. We are collecting all of the income, or that is the plan, in a capital pool, so we don't have a special project risk. On the left-hand side, you see the Social Impact Foundation that should have up to 30% of the project, and then we take each project in a SPV structure. And in the beginning, we were planning for about 20 up to 10 megawatt projects. The regulation didn't work for mini hydro for bankable, so we have changed to focus on large hydro. Now we see where the regulation goes, but we have a strong focus on the project itself and how we can support that. So first of all, we need to have the financing. So equity, we as investor, we are supporting that. So we are paying for everything up to construction and then the equity part. And we do have talk with some selected debt providers. We are not shopping around anymore, trying to find other financing sources. Before, it's pretty pointless until we have a regulation and a PPA template that we can say, okay, this is how this will work. Until that, it's meaningless. The foundation, well, it is in place, but we have not given any funding because before we have income from the project, it's no point. From the developing, we're working with Jacobs and ACOM, international consultants. For the legal, Baker McKinsey and HSP is doing all work for us, and then of course they also do the tax review. For construction, we only like to work with 2 partners. We have Andritz for all electrical and mechanical, and Hutama Karya for the civil works. I approached them in 2015 and said, I'd like to have you as our partner for all projects. And honestly, they thought it was a good idea. And then also we have Jacobs to do the engineering. And for the operation, we also asked Andritz to run the project and maintain them. And our team is there to support. So what has come out of those 5 years we have been working with this? Well, by one project, Sidamandi, we could increase it to 20 megawatt. That will give 105 gigawatt hours. This is as shovel ready as you can get. And but when it comes to PPAs and so, we think that in the best case we can start that Q4. So that we are ready for. Another project is Palausan. It's also those are all in North Sumatra. That is also a project that was originally for 4.4 megawatts, but it's good for 20 megawatts. So we stepped into that. It has a little bit more energy, and target construction is for that. It's pretty similar to Sidamandi. It is Q2 2021. And a bigger project, Batantoro. Originally that was 7.5 megawatt. We could combine it upstream, and the target it is now 55 megawatt, 320 gigawatt hour. So realistically, Q4 2021 would be. So this is investments for about 200 million US. Well, what is the outcome? Well, you are in this business, so you know all of this. But it is total 95 megawatt, 550 gigawatt hour. And what difference will that make? Well, for the first one, for the climate change and global climate, this will replace about up to 500 tons of CO2 that we per year. And when it looks at the fuel, 225,000 tons of fuel. Yes? Hello? And all 900,000 barrels of oil, and for normal people to understand this, about 100,000 cars fuel consumption. When it comes to finance, well, I think if we look at the PPP generation cost for North Sumatra, it is about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. So if we just split that for tariff and cost savings for PLN, that will be up to $47 million per year. I think it's not only the climate that is a big winner, it's also PLN in Indonesia. And also we as a shareholder, we share up to 25% of the income with this foundation that we like to do the social work. And this is an important part. And why do we do this? Yes, that is because we can do that. And we have some philanthropy work and grant giving, but we think if we can invest and create an income and showing that those long infrastructure contracts can be also feeding social work. So then we have a really impact investing that we like to showcase and inspire other people to do. And also we as investors, we like to have a decent return on this. And what is needed then? Well, we have been doing this for 5 years, and we've seen the changes in regulations and the PPAs and so on. And what is needed to attract international investors like us? Well, it has to be, it's a lot of talk of bankability, and that's important. But first of all, it has to be sponsor friendly. No sponsors, no projects, and then we don't have any bankability questions either. So it has to be fair conditions and risk sharing. For financing, for both investors and the banks, we need to have bankable for project financing. That's important. Target, we hear about IRR 12-13%. That's decent. That works. If we can have stage tariffs, it helps, especially for the foundation. Foundation is there, and we like them to be there. It's an evergreen foundation then, and the boot is not good then. So the BOO definitely helps. For hydro, it's so long and investments, and I think we will not be willing to invest a couple of millions of dollars to come into an auction and says maybe lose the project. So direct appointment is for us needed. When it comes to PPAs, the large hydro PPAs before 2017 was quite okay. So if you're looking for a PPA, look at that one. I think that would be accepted for all international. And last one, stable and foreseeable terms and conditions. That is highly appreciated and needed. So we have been doing this for 5 years now, and we are getting good feedback that there will be a regulation now that comes that will address all of those issues we had. That regulation, when it comes, it also has to develop into a PPA template from PLN, because it's PLN we will be working with. So well, with that said, we stay tuned here. We keep on working, investing in those projects. We'll do that some more time, and I will be happy to answer any questions afterwards. Thanks all.
Yeah, thank you, Babeng, for the presentation about the 3GT company and the projects and the expectations on the what could encourage international investors to come and invest in renewable energy. Thank you very much, Babeng. I would like to invite Pak Ari Sudono as a country head of PENA Energy about the same questions actually. What would be required in order for you to or for PENA Energy to invest more in Indonesia? Please, Pak Ari.
Thank you, Pak Paul. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. First of all, just quick. I don't have a PowerPoint. I think this is a bincang-bincang, so better to have a conversation rather than having a presentation. But quickly before I start with my points, I just want to quickly introduce Vina for those of you who's not familiar with us. So we are an IPP that focuses on solar and wind only. We don't do geothermals, we don't do hydros. We operate in 9 countries in Asia Pacific. We have 2 gigawatts of power plants already in operation, already COD. And we are currently building all across those countries about 1 gigawatt in 2020. In Indonesia, we have 114 megawatt, 72 megawatt solar, and 72 megawatt wind and 42 megawatt solar. All of them are already in operations since 2019. We are part of our major shareholder is a private equity called Global Infrastructure Partners, one of the largest infrastructure PEs in the world. They manage about $51 billion. And what I can share to you, which is quite interesting, is that because we had a call with GIP every now and then, during the COVID era, they actually told us that renewable energy is one of the very few sectors that they invested that do not see a significant negative impact or even any negative impact from the COVID. I think that's a belief that is strongly being observed outside of Indonesia, and that increases the attractiveness of renewable energy for international investors because they've seen that renewable energy investments are quite stable in terms of their return, even in the face of a damaging pandemic like COVID-19. We are also very enthusiastic in Indonesian potential for a couple of reasons. I mean, we, like what Pablo mentioned in his presentation, we do see that the LCOE has been decreasing significantly. I mean, compared to where we were when we built our solar plants and our wind plant in 2017, the LCOE has actually decreased significantly. So with the potential of Indonesia that is offering, with the knowledge that COVID-19, that renewable energy is very good to cope with COVID-19, and with the understanding, like what Haris mentioned, that the most important thing for PLN is tariff, I think we can actually be quite having a renewable energy opportunities in Indonesia would be quite beneficial for all the stakeholders in that industry. Especially, I'm talking wind and solar here. So we're very enthusiastic, and we are really itching to get the RFPs being issued by PLN. But what we are seeing as the challenges so far that international investors might be looking at, and I would most probably have almost the same observations as banks have.
Hello?
Suaranya hilang, Pak.
Pak Ari, your voice, we miss your voice. Pak Ari?
Ini. Jadi juga lagi.
Oh, oke. Okay. While Pak Ari is leaving for a while and waiting him later on, maybe we can start. We have seen already some of the questions coming in. I have seen, for example, here questions from Ibu Ani to Pablo to Peter and so on. Please, Ibu Yani, if you would like to ask question.
Terima kasih, Pak Paul. I do have a question. Firstly, to Pablo. You have shown us the graph concerning the investment cost of PV and wind farm. This is really, really amazing. Whether it's, yeah? Can you hear me?
Go on.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether the cost is included with the land cost, and then whether any minimum capacity of the wind farm or the PV farm, which can make the investment capital can drop significantly. Thank you.
Before you answer that question, Pablo, we would like to ask Pak Ari to continue. Pak Ari, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the technology problems I'm having. So yeah, going back to where I'm seeing is that the problem would be on the local content, because if the slides that Pablo's sharing actually assumes an importation of solar panels from manufacturers that are large manufacturers that have economies of scale. They're mostly based in China. So that's why we are seeing a large decrease in the cost, is because the solar panel itself has decreased significantly. The cost of the solar panels itself has decreased significantly. And to be able to utilize that advantage, we have to be able to import. But we are happy to support the Indonesian domestic solar panel manufacturer, but then the tariff has to be adjusted, because if we are using the local solar panels, they have a good quality as well. But because the Indonesian manufacturers are smaller in capacity, they lack the economies of scale, so their price is still much higher than if we import the solar panels. Happy to do so, but then it will impact the tariff and the returns that the IPPs are actually enjoying. So that's one on the TKBN, and the rest are the same, like what Bank has mentioned. We want to see a stable PPA. a PPA that has a good risk allocation between all the stakeholders, a PPA that is bankable. I mean, the PPA, the first generation PPA, or even our PPAs in the operating solar and wind power plants, they're very good. The PPAs have moved into more favorable to the state, for example, but that's totally fine as long as it's still within acceptable limits of the investor and the lender. And I think that's where we need to have a standard PPA template to be inserted into regulation so that we can actually do negotiations much faster with PLN. And again, also procurement size, because, and this is maybe alluding to the question, the larger the size of the procurement, definitely the lower the investment cost because of the economies of scale impact. And I'm very happy to hear Pak Harris's explanation, and we're really looking forward to Pak Harris about the large scale, what do you call it, large scale solar PV procurement. Looking forward to that because I do think with the large scale procurement program, you can actually achieve a better tariff for PLN. So I think that those are the points that I want to make. We need local content. We need to look at local content. We need to look at the PPA. We need to look at prioritization. PLN may be more familiar with the conventional power plants, so they might favor the more conventional power plants. So that's something that may be supported through regulation, and maybe to be part of PLN's KPIs and the procurement that you have mentioned in terms of size and in terms of the timeliness. So that's my points. Thank you so much for Pak Paul for having me here and for Pak Surya, and have a good afternoon to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ari, for the speech. Now, Pablo, if you could answer the questions before that come from Ibu Yani, please, Pablo.
Yes, thank you. So the cost reduction has been remarkable for both PV and onshore. Mostly Yanni is asking about what is included in this. I mean, this is from a very global perspective, what I showed. Of course, it requires us collecting data on all sorts of projects throughout the globe. Wherever we have good indications of what the land costs are, we collect them as well. As you may know, however, land cost, the approach to land cost varies heavily by geographies, right? Because there's different models on how to manage the land cost. So there's leasing, there's actually buying of the property, there's all sorts of stuff that can differ. So, but wherever it's possible, we collect those data as well. And the challenge for us is to try to harmonize the different cost categories. So I didn't have time. I can actually show you if I may.
Please, if you can show that.
Yeah. Maybe this one. Okay. And also, wait, give me a second now. I think it's working now, isn't it?
No, not appearing yet.
Oh, okay, wait. This one, share go.
Oh yes, now.
Yeah, so for example, for PV, we keep track of all sorts of different categories. You see the case of Indonesia here around. It's quite competitive already. It's for 2019, a wide range of costs for different for the different countries, right? So this is a little bit harder to keep the cost breakdown for. This is the cost breakdown for utility scale PV. Then but the trick here is to try to harmonize the different cost categories among countries, which are not, it's not an easy thing because of the because of these differences in approaches and different approaches to project development throughout the globe. But we keep as much as we can and as detailed as we can for different technologies. I wanted to mention on the other aspect that Ari mentioned recently, this is a view of how things have changed per PV from 2010 to 2019 from the total installed cost perspective, so US dollars per kilowatt. You see in 2010, global average here shown. So around 4,700 and down to below 1,000 US dollars per kilowatt in 2019. And where has these reductions come from? So rightly, you mentioned module cost have come down. So about 62% of the module cost, module and inverter, the costs are responsible, the module and inverter are responsible for 62% of that cost reduction. However, as you can see here, in 2019, on average, the BOS costs, on non-module costs, so to speak, make up around 64% of the total install cost on average throughout the countries shown here. So the cost reduction drivers have been changing, and this is important. So I thought it interesting to just mention that. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Pablo, for the explanation. Hope Bu Yani, you get the good explanation already from Pablo. Next question, I'd like to
Thank you,
invite
Pablo.
Pak Parlindungan Purba to ask questions. Please, Pak Parlin.
Okay, thank you, Pak Paul. I'm very happy to attend this meeting since there are two reasons. One, yesterday we just have a discussion regarding the electricity in North Sumatra province. My name is Parlindungan Purba. If you translate into English, Mr. Protection of the Heritage Things. And the second, I'm very happy here to know that there are many interests has been done to North Sumatra. And for information, yesterday we have a webinar opened by the Governor of North Sumatra and the local PLN and the society. I'm the chairman of Indonesian Electrical Power Society MKI in North Sumatra in Medan. So I'm very happy to be here today. And also there are some conclusion yesterday that we are on the way now to make the RUKD, Rencana Umum Ketenaga Listrikan Daerah. That is the something like general planning for local electrical power. Nowadays, we are on the way to make it. So long time, we are not success to make it. And now we are on the way to make, so it is easier for the investors. So we can join between the RUPTL with the PLN planning and then the local RUKD, it is means the general planning for local electric power and the spatial planning. So the cost will be not so high. For example, I heard just now about the land buying and anything. So we are on the way that, and hopefully in 1 year, North Sumatra will be interesting for you all. And then I would like to raise some questions. One to the Mr. Pablo. So before this, I'm the Senator of Indonesia for 15 years. I'm the chairman of the Commission number 2 in the Senayan. And the first time in the past 5 years, we are initiating the Bill of Renewable Energy. And now I'm very happy to inform you that it has been tabled in the Parliament in this DPR. So it's come from Senator office 5 years ago after we are visiting the COP15, if I'm not mistaken, in Paris, and the way home and the plane, we're talking about that, and we make it as the initiative of DPD, House of Regional Representative, and fortunately now has been done and table and discussion in Parliament. My question is to Mr. Pablo. This is more on the general knowledge question. How do you think about the role of renewable energy in Southeast Asia? So we know there is some development, Irena, I know. My question is, what is the role? It is interesting or not very interesting? Number two, I would like to raise to Mr. Peter. since you have invest in Indonesia, in North Sumatra, I'm very thank you for you. I would like, what is the critical, handicap that make it not slow, but to make it faster in the future? And number three, Pak Haris, I want to ask you, you mentioned about the president decree, about the tariff of the renewable energy. My question, is it related to the renewable energy bill that is discussed now in Parliament? And the fourth is my friend Pak Ari, thank you. I heard you are here. You mentioned about the local content. What is your idea for improving and to make stronger for the local players? Since after COVID here now, we want to, to make success story, not just importing, but our local content. Thank you, Pak Paul, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Starting from you, Pablo. Pablo?
Yes, thank you, Parling Duban, for your question. And as you know, Irina is also in the past, maybe been part of this, has been engaging a lot with parliamentary stakeholders, with parliamentary dialogue to try to push, of course, the agenda for renewables and to try to understand the needs of our member countries. So thank you for being part of that. Regarding your question, definitely we believe that renewables should play a key role in Southeast Asia. They've started to do that. In fact, we see a shift in terms of deployment, much more deployment in recent years due to changing regulation, more ambitious targets as well that you might be aware of. So especially in the current context, renewables can provide a sustainable path to grow. I think also Ari was mentioning, and I fully agree with that, and other speakers were mentioning too, that of the resilience that renewables can have to other aspects, and especially in the pandemic, negative aspects that have occurred in the economy. But renewables can prove to be a resilient solution that is also job creating. So this is the view that we can have, and I think the countries in Southeast Asia are definitely becoming more and more aware of that and reacting accordingly. So we're happy to support in any form that we can.
Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you. Please, Peter.
Thank you for the question, Parlin Dugan. It's a great question of what are the handicaps that are slowing down investment. And I'll give an example. Vietnam went from basically nothing to about 4,000 megawatts between 2018 and 2019 of solar. And what that demonstrates is that there's a lot of capital that's ready to go into projects once they have a clear signal. In the case of Vietnam, it was having a feed-in tariff that they adjusted a little bit, and it wasn't really perfectly bankable from international investors' perspective. There were some complaints about it, but that provided a signal. So more, from the project level, the thing that we see that really has to be in place, there has to be a clear off-taker. There has to be something to make it bankable. So an off-taker, but also a guarantee, a PPA of some sort. And it's also quite important to have an exit strategy. We find most of the companies that come into PFAN, when they start out, they'll be like a $3 million or $5 million project, and they'll say exit through IPO, which is ridiculous, right? So these are some of the things that we help the projects with in terms of structuring to have clear financials and making sure that the investment is just clear. But there are also some things related to how to structure the project. So if you're looking at North Sumatra and you're looking at a single project, it might be better to look at a company investment if you package some projects together. I mean, that's one approach. And the other thing is, just at the national level or the provincial level, having a clear policy support, having some financing mechanisms such as credit guarantees. These can be very, very, very helpful. And I listened carefully about what Harris said about the FIT and how that is working. And so, auctions for larger projects and FITs for smaller projects. It seems like basically a pretty good approach. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything that you could add, Pak Haris?
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Parlindungan Purba. So related to the president regulation, draft of president regulation. Now, in the discussion with another related ministry. So 2 days ago, we already start to discuss with another ministry. So I think this is a good progress for us to continue finalizing this regulation. In this regulation, we, like I mentioned before, we already also considering about the LCOA, because the price is based on LCOA approach. And then when I calculate the LCOA, we try to considering like IRR 12%. I think the previous speaker also mentioned about the 12% until 13% for bankability approach. And then we are also try to put the long-term contracts, 30 years. And then BOO is only an option, so you can also sign contract by using BOO. And then price also based on, we also considering the location factor. So the price in Java is different with the others island. So I think this year of our planning to accelerate the implementation of the renewable energy, and then this price is not need a good approach and do not need discussion with the parliament. So this is fully from the government side. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Haris. Pak Beng, do you want to add to the question from Pak Parlindungan? Pak Beng?
What was the question?
There are several questions, but for example, what was the how do you see the renewable energy positions in future? And
well, to me, it's clear it's the only way to go, and I think it's as when we get a stable and visible terms and conditions, it will take off good. We focus on hydro because we think it's the most stable thing, and if we build it correctly now, it will run for 100 years. So it will take over. That's my hope and my belief.
Okay, thank you, Pak Beng. Pak Ari, do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So, Pak Parlin, my dear friend, thank you for asking the question. I think you were asking about my idea about the TKDM. I think just my humble opinion is that we need to differentiate between those that have to fight on tariff. I mean, commercial projects that have to fight on tariff, on auctions and everything like that, and large utility scale PVs. My proposition is not to include them under the requirement for TKDN, but the requirement for the TKDN has to be implemented for smaller projects that have the benefit of a higher tariff. Because a higher cost, then obviously a higher tariff, that's that makes sense. But if you have an auction where people are trying to reduce the cost as much as possible, having a higher cost there when there are cheaper options outside of the alternative, then it could actually be detrimental to the objective of having the lowest price possible. So separating those two, in my humble opinion, would be something that to be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ari. I see Pak Nono Subianta would like to ask questions. Pak Nono, please.
Pak Paul, Bapak, Ibu peserta, kami dari sekretariat menyampaikan mengenai daftar absensi yang bisa Bapak Ibu isi melalui Google Form pada link yang ada di chat window di Zoom meeting ini. Terima kasih, Pak Paul.
Baik, now Pak Nono, you raise hand. Okay, if Pak Nono is not there anymore, anyone would like to ask questions to the panelists? So if no one would like to ask questions, then I will ask questions. Pablo.
Paul?
Yes.
Excuse me. I do have one more question for Pablo.
Yes, please.
Pablo, there are many remote places where they are currently utilize diesel generator set, where even in a specific island with a load of perhaps 12 megawatt or even half megawatt, but they need electricity for 24 hours. We know that with the PV farm, the electricity is not available at night unless if you have battery. My question is, if the battery are included, what is the investment cost per kilowatt hour for that specific area? Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Yani. Before you ask questions, Pablo, I have a question to you. If we look, if you read the newspaper in the lately, for example, yesterday or 2 days ago, India have finalized the bidding with the low tariff and so on. Do you know what makes it different from each other, from each country? The latest one, I think it was 1.35 somewhere, but with big capacity and so on. Pablo, can you please respond to that 2 questions?
Sure, with pleasure. Let me just start my video. Yeah, so regarding the first one from Yanni, we do have some other analysis also on batteries, because you were asking about that. For example, a while ago, we released a report called Electricity Storage and Renewables. And some of your questions are addressed there, showing some costs of different battery technologies. This is a little bit of a also large trending topic nowadays, of course, but as well for batteries, we see cost reduction already happening and expected to keep on happening in the mid and longer term future for different technologies. Sometimes, of course, I talked a lot in here a lot about the view from the utility scale perspective of cost, but of course, for some locations, utility scale is not the relevant option, right? It's more a different set of options that may be available there, depending on whether it's, like you mentioned, PV plus storage or PV plus batteries, or is there also need to develop a full microgrid system there. So of course, costs can vary there, and of course, the smaller scale systems have also currently often case higher costs than the larger utility scale projects that are, let's say, about 1 megawatt or even larger, 5 megawatts up to 10 megawatts, right? So economies of scale are different for those projects, but it's all about what you're the cost of the technology that you're replacing, right? So also, if it makes sense to replace diesel, also other environmental benefits, right, and social benefits, and it makes sense to take a look at these options of microgrid and others. So increasingly, just generally speaking, PV plus battery is increasingly becoming an option throughout the world, actually, because of its cost effectiveness. So, and what was the second question? Sorry.
Yeah, what will be tentatively, you know, the cost investment cost per kilowatt hour?
Right. This is difficult to assess in such a way. I can share with you, and within that effort that we made in analyzing the cost transfer storage, we also came up with a tool to preliminary analyze the cost of different options that include batteries. So I can share that with you if I can have your contact details so that you can start analyzing that. And there are some cost trends there as well for different technologies. It depends a lot on the technology that you choose and the availability, of course, of that technology in that location, right?
Thank you, Pablo, for your info.
Right.
I have noticed in that many areas, sometimes the cost to generate electricity in that area is 20 cent dollars per kilowatt hours, 18 cent dollars per kilowatt hour. If PV could do it less than that, it will be amazing.
Thank you, Bu Yani. So
thank you.
The other question that that I had before is, for example, if we compare the result of bidding, reverse auction that have been done in many countries, what are the main, let's say, drivers for this low cost and differences? I would like to if you could respond to that, and also Peter, if you could give also respond to the same question.
The cost transfer storage. We also came up with a tool.
Sorry, please.
Yes, yeah, the different. We are talking about bidding on auction schemes throughout the world. Definitely, I think the clarity in the rules, consistency in the rules has been a great factor for success. But at the same time, as the market grows, right, and experience grows from development side, there is more, let's say, more boldness in the times in the offerings, right? So I think it's a matter of consistency, clarity, also in the regulation, clarity in the rules. You mentioned the case of India. You also see some evolution that starts to adjust to the market conditions. For example, in terms of the times of expected times to development, for example, that in the case of India, often in some locations have started even to reduce to be even more competitive, right? To when this some flexibility that needs to happen as well in terms of clarity in terms of what happens if the project is not finalized on time or not. But generally speaking, I think the consistency and the clarity in regulation and the rules depicted in the auction and schemes is a key consideration. But at the same time, just the generic growth of the market is also playing a role in achieving this. I mean, that's from the, let's say, from the auction side. In terms of PPAs, it's a different story. If we're comparing around the world, there are locations where large players have access to very low cost of finance, for example. And of course, that allows for very, very low PPAs to become an option. But also economies of scale, depending on the players. Some players are more confident because they've gained already some experience on the technologies at very large scale, and so that is driving down the cost of PPAs as well. So, but drivers vary by country. So,
yeah, thank you, Peter. Can you please add to that questions, please?
Sure. I mean, I think Pablo's, correct about the fact that the drivers vary across country, and one of the problems is when they've had some really a few years ago some really low auction prices from the Middle East, and all of a sudden the ministers from Indonesia and Vietnam and others they want 1 cent per kilowatt hour power too, and you're not going to get that because, as Pablo said, the economies of scale. Very important thing is the cost of capital, right? So you're not going to get 1 or 2 cents per kilowatt hour in most of the ASEAN countries. But the story I'll tell a brief story about the experience with Cambodia, which shows that even though there are differences, the ability of a clear and, as Pablo said, transparent process to drive down costs is remarkable. So in Cambodia, in about I think 2017 or 2018, a company called Sunseap from Singapore won a bid to build a 10 megawatt solar PV plant. And this was the first utility scale solar project in Cambodia. And they got some concessional financing from ADB, and the price, I believe, was about 9.1 cents per kilowatt hour. So this, as I recall, was the first utility scale PV project in the region, at least in the Mekong region, that was under 10 cents. And the developer told me that without the ADB financing, it would have been about 11.5 cents. The ADB financing allowed them to bring it down about 1.5 cents to about 9.3 cents. Okay, subsequent to that, in late 2018 and 2019, ADB started looking at the India reverse auction process. They took a bunch of Cambodians to India and to learn from what they did well and what they didn't do so well, and the learnings they had. And they set up a solar park. So you probably have heard about this solar park project. It's slated to be up to 100 megawatts. And so the things that reduce the uncertainty, which have been brought up before, is the land is made available by the Cambodian government. The offtake is sorted out. The evacuation of the power is sorted out. So the bidders are bidding on a very clear and limited number of things, basically being able to install and operate the solar equipment and then inject it into the grid. So they got down to 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So I believe that's the lowest utility scale rate to that time. That was in, I think, October, November of last year. So basically going down about 60 to 70% in about a year and a half with an auction process that was clear. ADB's experience and south to south knowledge transfer really helped to make that happen. Over.
Thank you, Peter, for the explanations. Pak Bengt, as you have heard about the explanation from Pak Haris about the update on regulations, and then the expectation that soon the presidential regulation will be issued. Do you think that with that conditions that there will be more and more investment that coming from international to invest in renewable energy in Indonesia? So I cannot hear, Bengt. Yes.
Yes, I think because there is a big potential, and we have mostly looked at Sumatra. There is a there is a lot of capital, both equity and debt, that is looking for renewables, and as long as we have a long-term regulation, but it's not only the regulation. We have to look at the PPA that comes from that regulation. So if that goes in line with the vision, the offer from PLN goes in line with the vision from the regulation, then I think it will take off. Yes.
Thank you. Just for your information, for all of you, METI got actually received a lot of questions from international investors about the possibility to invest on renewable energy in Indonesia. And we explained to them the current situations, but including also the situations on the update or revision of the regulations that would help to facilitate the let's say investment in renewable energy. And with that all questions, actually, we understand that there are a lot of a lot of investors that is ready to deploy their investment as soon as the regulations and the PPA, bankable PPA is established. So we hope that with the new regulation now and later on with the new bill, draft bill that is being discussed in Parliament, it will pave the way for let's say meeting the renewable energy target and attract international investor, and also not only international, also domestic investors. We know that a lot of local investors also are willing to invest more and more in renewable energy. So we are now at 15:51, and if there is no pressing questions, I'd like to invite Pak Surya to close the sessions.
Pak Paul.
Yes, please, Pak Anton.
Yeah, I would like to have a comment or questions. So far, we talk about the supply side investment and so forth, but there was one mention about the market. I think we have probably also to, together with building the supply side, we also have to build the market by what you call it, including a plan for using the renewable energy for economic development in the area or for industrial development in the area, so that there's always guaranteed market and also a market growth. What do you think about it? Thank you.
Pak Anton, who do you address your questions to? Pak Haris or to?
I think it's more to Pak Paul, Pak Peter, Pak
Okay.
or to anyone.
Okay, thank you, Pak Anton. I mean, because Pak Haris, as part of the plan of the ABTKA, maybe if we could update about the plan of the industrial zone with Rabbit and Rabbit, Pak. Please, Pak.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Paul. So far, yes, we have several progress related to the implementation of Rabbit, so renewable energy-based industrial development. So one of have a good progress now is in North Kalimantan. So there is a Kayan Hydro Energy. So that is the private company. They already has a specific zone, a specific commercial zone for the electricity produced from their own hydropower. So the first planning is about 900 megawatt could be developing now in I think they already prepared this the construction, and we hope that supply and demand side could be integrated soon. And we are also has a good progress in Papua. So there is a private company also from Australia interest to develop 20,000 megawatt in the Membramo area. So they want also to integrate to the industrial sector. So yeah, but this is still in progress in Indonesia. So we hope that there is a several maybe incentive could be also provided for this kind of activity. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak.
Can we leave now? Thank you.
Pak Paul, where are you, Pak Paul? Okay, if there is no Pak Paul, I think so. Yeah.
Sorry. As part of response to Pak Anton, as you know that we are preparing the draft white paper now. In the draft white paper, we said that actually the industrial zone or special economic zone should use more and more renewable energy for the reason that, for example, in the tourism area, that if we have more and more renewable energy supplying or providing energy to the area, then it would attract the how do you call it, environmentally conscious tourists, let's say like that, who would like to come to area that's really environmental friendly. And also, but the second reason in the industrial area is actually because it will reduce the of the production. The product emissions of each product later on will be reduced. Peter, do you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Pak Haris' response was quite good and very specific to Indonesia. I think more generally, the important thing is that we need to think more from an economic development perspective rather than just a renewable energy technology perspective, and look at where there is potential for agro processing or rural industry, and build mini grids around those areas, whether it's a special economic zone, an industrial zone, agro processing, because it makes the economics of the systems much better. And I mean, I think it's been a pretty much a failure of the way mini grids have been developed in many countries. It's been like, we have this solution and we're just going to plunk this down in a village, and not really thinking about how that fits into the economic development of the area. So, and also supporting what you just said, Pak Paul, about the opportunities such as industrial zones or tourism as areas to really use the renewable energy for development.
Thank you, Peter. We are now at 15:58, and I would like to thank you, Pablo, Peter, Bengt, and Pak Ari, and of course Pak Haris as well, for the participation in the discussion today. And also, we would like to thank you all for participating in this webinar today. The last word will be with Pak Surya as a chairman. Then also, if you want to add to respond to the questions before, and also I'd like to invite you as well to close this meeting. Please, Pak Surya.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I think that this is a very interesting topic today, which has been informed by Pablo, by Peter, by Bang, Pak Ari, and also Pak Haris on behalf of DGPTK. I think I would like to respond on the question from Pak Anton from the last question on the rebate and rebate, because last week that we have, not last week, last Monday, I think we have the meeting on the task force from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources to accelerate the use of renewable energy in the next 6 months, to issue and to study, to assess everything. And one of the point that we are going to include is that have been mentioned by also Bu Intern as the chair of the expert of the minister, is rebate and rebate. So make sure that will be will be one of the solution for the renewable energy in the future. But we do not really don't have regulation on that. But I think because the task force team is to establish the regulation, maybe will be put also in that kind of regulation. And the last, I think, because the time is out now, so we would like to thank to all of you. Pak Anton, Pak Joko is very quiet today. Bu Yani, and also Pak Haris, Pablo, Banks, Peter, and Pak Ari, all of you. This is, of course, will be very, very important for us today and very comprehensive information. Again, thank you and see you for the next session. Bye.
Bye, thank you, Meti.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Pak Surya. Just for announcement, next week our bincang-bincang Meti for next week will be about the regulations. It is about presentation of the study that has been conducted by UGM together with Meti on the regulations that on the energy sector. It will be 2 discussion series. First is about the general regulatory issues and the price, energy price. Then there will be the second discussion of about the feed-in tariff and so on, including the PPA. I hope that all of you could join the discussion, but unfortunately, for those of you who don't speak Indonesia, because the discussion will be done in Indonesian language. And again, thank you very much for your participation today, and hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Bu Yani, apa
See
kabar?
you, Bu Yani.
Baik kabar.
Kangen nih sama Bu Yani.
Thank you.
Sama, Pak. See you when I see you, okay?
Aduh, terima kasih, Bu.
Yo, Pak Joko, bye.
Thank you, Baris.
Pengen
Thank
dulu,
you very
Pak.
much.
Bu Yani,
Goodbye.
Bu. Bye.
Yeah,
Nah,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, Paulo. I hope I can see you one day. Bye-bye.
Great.
Ini saya itu mau mindahin pabrik PLTS, Bu, dari Korea sama Cina ke Indonesia.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Pak.
Let's do.
Makanya saya mau ketemu sama Bu Yani ahlinya ini.
Oke, Pak. Let's do it.
Saya bisa kerja doang nih.
Iya, Pak. Oke. Bye,
Oke, terima
all.
kasih.
Bye.
Terima kasih. Salam dari Sumut.
Mana Pak
Terima
Parlin?
kasih Pak Perlindungan.
Salam dari Sumut.
Ya.
Mas, belum sewa.
Pak, jangan lupa Pak Nias, Pak.
Siap.
Siap.
Ya, kita ngobrol di Jakarta lah ya. Aku datang.
Ya, betul.
Ya, Pak Sudah Dharma. Terima
Oke.
kasih.
Masih.